What's up, guys? Brett Okamoto from ESPN, joined by my colleague Marc Raimondi, who, again, if you watched our preview of UFC 275, neither of us made the trip out to Singapore, but of course, we were covering the fights, had a lot of content before the fights, and then watched what was an absolute wild, wild night of mixed martial arts, man. And I feel like we say that all the time. I feel like on these post shows and these YouTube recaps, like we can't just keep saying the same thing. They're like, oh my God, that was crazy. That was crazy. But this was legitimately just odd, some weird stuff. I mean, obviously you had Joanna retire, which there's an emotional element to that. And just the way in which it all capped off with the main event. I mean, let's start there. This main event between Glover Teixeira and Jiri Prochazka. Yeah. We have a new champion in Jiri Prochazka. I'll real quick, what I'll say is that, he chokes him out with 28 seconds left. And then John Anik gets a look at the scorecards and says, had Glover just made it to the end of that fight, finished the fight, he was ahead on I believe all three scorecards, right? That he would have remained the UFC light heavyweight champion. Taps out to a choke with 28 seconds left. Just your thoughts on what we just witnessed in the main event of UFC 275.
Whew, I have a lot of thoughts. I actually just saw the scorecards myself. Glover was ahead on, I think he was ahead on all of them. No, I'm sorry. One judge had a 38-38. So by my calculations, if Glover had made it to the end, to the final bell, and Jiri was the winner of the fifth round, it would have been a split draw, and Glover would have remained the champion. Had the judges gave that round, which Glover was, I think, winning that round right until the final flurry. It was just a wild fight. I'm exhausted. If Glover had won that round, he wins the fight. He's still champion. But it was a close fight up until, I mean, honestly, Brett, if I'm a judge, I don't know how, I don't remember all the stuff that happened in this fight. I mean, and I'm taking notes. I'm writing, the newser for ESPN.com. I take this stuff very seriously. So many things happened in this damn fight. I mean, the twists and turns, the shifts in momentum. I don't think I've ever seen a fight like this. This to me, and maybe this is just in the moment, and maybe this is recency bias, Brett, but to me, one of the greatest fights I've ever seen in my life. I thought this was an all-time classic.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I thought of you as the fight was progressing because it had the element of almost like a WWE fight. Yes. And it had the element of a pro wrestling fight where you go and then I go. The momentum swings, you just don't see momentum swings like that, where you're like, oh, okay, this has been a great fight, but now it's over for this guy. Like the tides have turned. There's just no way it's gonna come back. Were you just said it was one of the greatest fights you've ever seen. Were you impressed by both? Were you disappointed in some ways by both? Like, how would you grade their performances in this fight?
I mean, I can't say that anything disappointed me about this fight. Certainly the toughness, the grit, the will, the determination. I mean, off the charts from both men. I mean, because both men at times I thought were finished and the fight was done. And they somehow, Jiri like rolling out of an arm triangle, or like Glover, getting out of a Jiri submission, or landing like an opportune takedown when Jiri is pouring on the combinations. Certainly, it was not the most technical fight ever, right? Certainly, it was not. I don't think anyone would say this was either of their best performances. Even Prochazka in the cage said with DC that he was disappointed and he would do better next time. I don't care about any of those things. It doesn't matter. This was just a war of attrition. I mean, just back and forth. When one guy had the advantage, the other guy did something, or the guy that had the advantage made a mistake and the other guy took advantage of that mistake. An emotional, bloody, everything that you want, Brett, in a title fight, in a UFC title fight. It checks every single box that you could possibly even imagine. Drama, a finish without the hooks, with 30 seconds left in the fight. The second latest finish in UFC title history, next to Demetrius Johnson beating Kyoji Horiguchi in 2015 with that armbar in the final second. Glover Teixeira, the submission guy, never been submitted in his entire 41 fight career. Jiri gets him without the hooks in, 30 seconds left in the fifth round. I mean, none of it almost doesn't even make sense what happened in this fight. I'm actually processing it right now in real time with you.
Yeah, I could see that. It's actually kind of fun to watch your mind sort of just churn away, and then all these words just spewing out of your mouth as they're coming.
I'm sweating over here, Brett. This is nuts.
I mean, here's what I'll say about it. And this is what these kind of post fight analysis are meant for. Is like we spin it ahead, and I can't help but get the feeling watching this fight that, hey, Jiri, this is entertaining. This is amazing. I would watch you fight every day of the week. If you're going to be a long-term champion in this division, though, you can't fight like this all the time, man. I mean, he made some errors that I think really opened some windows for Glover that would not have been there had he not done some of the things that he did. And in some ways, you got to stay true to yourself. You got to stay true to your style. It's almost like the Khamzat Gilbert thing. Khamzat didn't fight very smart when he fought Gilbert Burns, but that's kind of who he is. He fights ultra aggressive. I think Jiri is kind of the same way, but man, you're fighting the elite guys. If Jiri Prochazka wants to be a long-term champion in this 205-pound division, I don't know if he can fight like this, but maybe he can. I mean, maybe he can, because he's already fought some great competition here. 3 fights into the UFC. He's fought Dominic Reyes. He's fought Volkan Oezdemir. He's knocked them out. He's going to be a handful to deal with in the first round. Do you have those same concerns watching this, or do you think, hey, Jiri going to Jiri, and that's going to work for him?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I think this is going to be an ongoing situation with him and his team and his coaches, as to, because you don't want to take away what makes him so good. He's so unpredictable, and some would say, and I think we would probably even agree, the both of us, that even going for the choke there at the end of the fight, when he had Glover turtled up and he was landing shots, that could have been a mistake. It ended up working for him in that case, but there were other submissions or other positions during that fight that he made a big error on. And to your point, I do think that it's hard to sustain the consistency of being a long-term UFC champion when you have to fight the best guy every single time. Every title defense, it's just a nonstop, list of the best guys in the world coming at you. It's hard to win every single time fighting like that. Jon Jones didn't fight like that. Jon Jones was incredibly crafty and technical, and his fight IQ was off the charts. I'm not saying that Jiri's fight IQ is not off the charts, but he is reckless at times, and sometimes it's to his benefit, sometimes his detriment. His coaches and his team need to figure out a way to kind of meet in the middle, I think.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be very interesting to see where he goes from here as just his style, because as you know, man, when you win that championship and then you see, Dana White talks about this all the time, is that there's a big difference between being the number one contender and a champion. It is a massive difference in money. It is a massive difference in opportunity. So I believe he has the talent and the ability to be a champion for a long time. I will be curious to see if, like, members of his team or something, now that so much is at stake and you have so much to lose, if you continue to fight recklessly like that, because I don't think he can get away with it long term, fighting the very best guys. One last thing on the main event: Glover Teixeira, says he wants to keep going. Almost sheepishly, he was asked in the octagon, "You're going to keep going?" He said, "I want to keep going." Do you think he should keep going? And if he does have one more, maybe at the end of the year, who would you put him against?
Wow. I mean, look, if this man wants to keep going at 42 years old, he was the oldest first-time champion in UFC history. Wants to do one more. I mean, who's really going to stand in his way? Could be a Jan Blachowicz rematch, or maybe something fun. I mean, maybe not even like a serious contender fight. Maybe they can find someone, that he could fight. That's not. I don't know. Maybe he fights Israel Adesanya. I don't know. I'm just throwing that. That just popped into my head. Maybe Adesanya comes up for a fun fight at 205 if he beats Cannonier to defend the middleweight title in July. That might be crazy, but I'm thinking crazy right now. I'm thinking I still have Jiri and Glover in my head, going nuts, and maybe I'm a little nuts now. Maybe it made me nuts.
You might be a little nuts. I don't like the Adesanya fight. I'll tell you that one. I think I got one, and you're gonna like it. Alexander Gustafsson. I think he fights Alexander Gustafsson. If he's gonna fight one more, I think that those two guys are so respected. They did fight once before. So respected. Two of the best light heavyweights of all time. Alex has a fight against Nikita Krylov, but win or lose, he's back in the 205-pound division. I think that would be fun. A lot of mutual respect there. So let's go to the co-main event. Valentina Shevchenko in a very, very close fight with Taila Santos. How did you score that fight?
I had it for Shevchenko 48-47. Did I have it confidently? Absolutely not. That there were rounds in that fight that were very difficult, I thought, to score, and it made it even more challenging to score because there were those head clashes in the third and fourth rounds of that fight, Brett. So, there was damage done through the head clash, but then Valentina was landing shots. So, like, how do you weigh the damage that she's doing with her hands? Santos's eye, her right eye was completely jacked up. I mean, it was swollen. It was pretty bad. I would say midway through the fourth round, it was pretty terrible. To me, that fight could have gone either way. I would not have thought it was a bad score if Santos won. I didn't think it was a bad score that Shevchenko won. Did not agree with the 49-46 that one judge had. They had 49-46 for Shevchenko. I don't think that Valentina Shevchenko won 4 rounds. I think you'd have a hard time trying to find 4 rounds that she won. But I mean, by far the toughest test so far of her title reign, no doubt about that. Santos put up a hell of a fight, and I thought Shevchenko seemed a little bit off, and I don't want to take away anything from Santos whatsoever because she fought a fantastic fight, had a great game plan, but it didn't seem like Shevchenko was the springy, bouncy, mobile, kickboxer that she always has been.
Yeah. And it's good that you kind of explained what you meant by off, because I was going to ask you, and sometimes it's hard to really pinpoint. Sometimes it just feels like a fighter doesn't have their best night, and that happens at every single weekend. These guys, it's like any other sport. You can't have your best night every single time. Yeah. I was curious a little bit about Valentina, some of her decision making. Obviously in the very, very, very beginning of the fight, in the first round, when she went for that throw, it didn't go her way, and then it almost led to her being choked out. And Taila Santos on her back, and then she continued to kind of go into the grappling. We always praise Valentina for a lot of things, right? We praise every aspect of her game. I thought that her decision making was made, but maybe that's just because she was facing adversity for the first time. Maybe it wasn't the decisions. Maybe we do got to give Taila Santos credit. The grappling was very interesting, man. And you heard Valentina after the fight, mention that she was bigger and that pounds matter, and maybe she was just struggling with the size. I don't know. I thought obviously it was a very, very interesting fight. It was good to see Valentina tested. I mean, you want to see every champion tested. You want to see close fights. You want to see competitive fights. So a lot of credit to Santos. The eye thing was unfortunate. I don't think it necessarily changed the fight. Of course, that you got to say that it probably had some impact, and it did look like it was bothering Santos. I wouldn't say that it impacted the actual result of the fight. Just moving forward, does it change anything that you think about Shevchenko? Do you think that the division looks at her slightly different? And then what do you think is next for her?
I think maybe the division look at her slightly differently because this was a lackluster performance. I mean, it's so hard to even live up to the dominance that she's had, and everyone is entitled to a bad night once in a while, and she ended up pulling out the win like great champions do when they have an off night, like a John Jones or Anderson Silva, who racked up these long, title defense streaks. But to your point about Shevchenko and the grappling and the takedowns, how many times have we seen, Brett, in MMA where you have a guy who's or a woman who's a great wrestler, and they get a couple of knockouts and they start to become, they want to become a knockout artist, right? They're kind of honed in on trying to knock people out. They get away from their wrestling a little bit. I feel like, and maybe I'm way off here, again, Jiri and Glover made me a little crazy, but I feel like the opposite has happened to Shevchenko. One of the best strikers in the game, male or female. She's won a zillion Muay Thai championships, and she's become someone that relies more on her wrestling and her top game than her striking. Does that make any sense? I mean, it almost feels like she's fallen in love with the grappling, and when she couldn't get some of those shots, and she made some poor decisions. It reminded me of that 5th round against Amanda Nunes in the last fight between the two of them, where she went for that head and arm throw, and she got stuck on the bottom. Same thing happened against Santos in this fight several times. So I feel like she's kind of fallen in love with the grappling a little bit too much.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, in her defense, I would fall in love with my grappling too if it's been as dominant as it has been leading up to this. I mean, she has been dominating this 125ers on the ground. But you're right. In a close fight, your decision making is definitely a big part of the results. And it was curious sometimes, and I think even the commentators mentioned it, that like, hey, some of these grappling exchanges have not gone Valentina's way, and yet she's still the one initiating them. But she's still the champ. She will move on. I think you just line her up with the next challenger at 125. I think Alexa Grasso and Viviana.
I want to see a rematch.
You do want to see a rematch.
I want to see Santos again.
I'm fine seeing a rematch, but I don't know if I need to see it immediately. I get it. When you have a dominant champion like that and someone challenges them, you want to kind of see it again. But I scored it for Valentina. You said you scored it for Valentina. I don't know if I don't know if you can sell the idea of an immediate rematch. I think Santos win one more fight and then she can get thrown back in there. In the meantime, line up the next one. And so that closes up on the co-main event. And so to wrap it up here, before we say goodbye, let's talk about Joanna Jedrzejczyk, man, and Weili and Zhang Weili. My thoughts real quick. I was so impressed with Zhang Weili. I did think that Joanna, that was Joanna. Sometimes when a fighter retires, you're like, you know what? In their last fight, there really wasn't them. I thought that was Joanna. I thought that she fought to a level in which we're accustomed to. I just think Weili is blossoming. I think that she's really turning the corner and becoming, potentially someone who will win the title back and could hold it for a long time. I mean, she is just improving. She looks very confident. We all know about her physical capabilities, the athlete that she is. She really impressed me tonight. And I'm not saying anything. I'm sure she impressed everybody, but was that kind of your take as well? Were you more impressed with Weili? What did you think about Joanna's last performance and of course her retiring?
Yeah, I thought Weili looked fantastic, and she mixed in the takedowns and the clinch work that she worked on with Henry Cejudo down at Fight Ready before her last fight with Rose Namajunas. I thought she was much more effective and much more committed to the wrestling against Joanna Jedrzejczyk than she was against Namajunas, which I thought was strange. I think when she was down there with Cejudo, Eddie Cha, and Captain Eric Albarracin, they wanted her to wrestle more against Namajunas. She didn't wrestle as much. She did a little bit and had success, but she went to that right away against Jedrzejczyk, and she got several takedowns in the first round. She landed some absolutely vicious ground and pound in that first round. And I feel like the grappling and the wrestling put that idea in Joanna's head, and it allowed for Weili to kind of get off a little bit more with their striking in the second round, leading to that spinning back fist finish. I thought that best performance of her career by far. This is a woman, they went 5 rounds and it was a back and forth insane war back in 2020. In this fight, I thought Weili pretty well dominated Joanna.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about, is the improvement, and I think you're right that she could have benefited maybe a little bit by using that wrestling a little more against Rose Namajunas, but it might just be that skill has developed even more. It's like she had a certain amount of time with Cejudo and Albarracin to work on that, and then it wasn't at the level that it is now, because it was expert tonight. I mean, it really was. The timing of it, the technique of it, it really was expert stuff from Weili. And then Joanna, you could tell right away. I mean, the gloves were coming off, and I had a feeling that if she lost this fight, that she was going to retire. Some of the members of her camp had kind of said the same thing, that if this one didn't go her way, they weren't sure what was going to be left for her. I'll just say that I will remember Joanna, of course, as a champion. I loved her self-belief. I know that a lot of fans, it kind of rubbed her the wrong way, rubbed them the wrong way, especially when it didn't always work out in her favor, and she talked up herself and she called herself the queen. And then if she lost, there were a lot of people that kind of reveled in that, and liked to see her get knocked down a peg. I always liked it, man. I always liked her self-belief. I thought that it was authentic. And I remember when she fought Valentina, and you're thinking to yourself, like, she's lost to Valentina in Muay Thai, and there's a size difference here. And this is a tough matchup. And just to see her still confidently go in and try to win that fight, and always, I don't know. I always liked the way that she carried herself during fight weeks. I will remember her for that. And yeah, just a dominant champion, 2015, 2017. I mean, I have not forgotten the way in which she was dismantling those contenders during her prime years. What about you? What's the big Joanna memories that stand out?
Yeah, I really think that, watching her kind of come up, she debuted in 2014. She was this, this Polish girl. No one could pronounce her last name. And, she kind of like initially she won like the hearts of fans because of her striking style and that confidence, and she spoke, her English got better and better and better and better. And I feel like it was an era of MMA, of women's MMA, where Ronda Rousey was kind of like in her prime and she was winning a lot of fights on the ground, and Joanna was at 115 kind of shaping that division around her with just expert striking, technical striking. It kind of opened up people's eyes to what a like really great technical women's MMA fights could be. I really thought that her fights with Claudia Gadelha, I thought were fantastic. The well-roundedness of those fights, it really, to me, it really bloomed the women's strawweight division, her reign. And it's still one of the best, it's the best women's division. It's one of the best divisions, I think, in the entire UFC right now. And I still remember, even before she fought Esparza, Joanna Jedrzejczyk, no one can pronounce her last name. It's a difficult one to pronounce. I think most of us hopefully have it by now. It's been many years, but she said, "You can just call me Joanna Champion." And now, Brett, I think that before too long, we're going to be calling her Joanna Hall of Famer.
Yeah, that's very, very well put. Fantastic career. And if Joanna is not Joanna, then I don't think Rose Namajunas is Rose Namajunas, because Rose built her name off of that big knockout and the mental kind of rivalry that they had leading up to that first fight in Madison Square Garden. So definitely a pioneer, definitely a legend. Congrats to Joanna. Got to mention Jake Matthews with an outstanding performance tonight. Jack Della Magdalena. We'll be talking about both of those guys, I'm sure. But our time is up for this evening. UFC 275 in the books. It was another wild night in the sport of mixed martial arts. Not one that we'll forget anytime soon. And thanks for sticking around and talking about it and hearing about it with us here on ESPN's YouTube channel. We will see you at the next one. It goes right to Austin, UFC Fight Night. Calvin Kattar and Josh Emmett. We'll see you there.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.